From an energy and environmental justice perspective, Australia seems to have two completely different speeds. In the sense, if you ask majority of people, is environment important? They'll say, of course, it's very important. But if you look at it from a political perspective, it's a little bit different. The argument out here shifts towards, well, we need jobs, and coal, or mining in general. It produces a lot of jobs for remote communities where they wouldn't have jobs otherwise. So it's been really interesting. I don't think we've got to the point where majority of people are standing up for this as much as they need to. But I think traveling is a really big thing, right? I mean, when you go overseas and you go beyond what you're used to, you see how other people live, how other people act, how other people are impacted by the decisions they make. If you talk to someone in Australia who lives where our energy producing plants are, which are still mostly coal power plants, they'll tell you the quality of air there is terrible. But if you live in the city of Melbourne, or if you live in Hobart, Tasmania, or Sydney, you're not seeing any of this stuff. The skies are blue, the clouds are white. You see rainbows, friends shaking hands, saying, "How do you do?" Life is good. Life is good. But definitely, it is something which I think will become increasingly more important. Over here, what's also really been interesting is, as the government hasn't proactively pushed the environmental justice and environmental policies as proactively as they should, because they're quite business friendly. From a business perspective, we've had a lot of businesses come out and said, hey, pay $5 and your airplane will be completely carbon neutral, your flight. Or our energy company, if you go to this particular plant, it's completely from renewable energy. Local governments have done some interesting stuff like solar panels, massive rebates on solar panels, payment plans without any interest charged. So what they're doing is they're enabling, based on technology which is A, readily available, and B, relatively affordable, the local government's giving incentives for people to put it in. So lights, for example, if you've got the traditional light bulbs, the company comes out, they'll walk through your house, take all the traditional light bulbs out, put new fittings in so that you can have LED lights. And that's a completely free service. And that's accessible to all. Now, whether it's there in all the states, I don't know, but it was definitely there in Victoria. So I'm assuming the other states would have had something similar.
Yeah, and I think probably what's happening in Victoria versus, say, the US is the access to that, right? The ease of being able to get that. In America, what's interesting is, there's still the same kind of conversation, right? This discourse of jobs, this fear of, by transitioning from coal or oil or what have you, natural gas, you are losing jobs. That is a fundamentally lazy argument, because you're going to get so many more jobs trying to transition a whole economy into a whole new energy source than you are from maintaining an old energy source, right? And even in rural areas, there are so many things that could be done in those rural areas that need to be done. You could build factories there based on the shortages where they can have solid jobs and they're not working with, their daily lives aren't being polluted, right? Like the folks who are working in these rural areas with coal, every day their lungs are being polluted, their soil is being polluted, their water is being polluted by the thing that's paying them their wages. And then some of those wages go to their healthcare, or actually not in Victoria, it's a little better, I'm sure. In America, healthcare is still a real issue. But fundamentally, that the argument of jobs is a lazy one. It's uninventive. The realities are, and studies have been done, show that there's going to be a lot more jobs across the board focusing on clean energy transition. We also have a real issue with just access. We're at a workforce shortage right now. Not because there's people who don't want any jobs. There's millions of people who want a job. We just don't have the training infrastructure to start bringing people into this. So if you want to get your house retrofitted, you want to improve its efficiency, you want a new you want a new heat pump in your home, or you want LED lights, you have to wait for that, right? And you have to still pay for it as well. So it's not free either. In America, our whole clean energy solution is debt based. You have to pay for it upfront, or you have to take out a loan.
Interesting. I guess it is the free market principle after all, right? I mean, if enough people demand it, then business will supply it. Enough competition, price comes down, becomes more affordable. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. And I think that's where the justice part really comes in, right? Like whether it's social justice, whether it's environmental justice, or the concept of equality. And there you touched on something really interesting, which is for the first time in a very long time in America's history, or even the global history, we're having conversations with diverse groups of people, not just diversity as a token for an organization to say, hey, look how inclusive we are, but real diversity where you have a completely mixed group of people from different lived experiences coming together and going, what does this look like to you? Or what do you eat for breakfast? Or how do you get to work? Or what does your house look like? What does your life look like? And all of a sudden we realized the inequalities, and we start talking about ideas to bridge the inequality. It's an interesting space in which we live.
Yeah, I want to point out something you said, equality, and bring in the other word, equity, right? Most people get those conflate those two words, equality and equity. They use them interchangeably. And it's important to note that equity is about, it is not about equal provisions, right? It's saying who needs what and giving that to them. So if someone needs more of this, then they get more of that, right? And so from a historical standpoint, it's also about making up for the lack of resources that was provided over decades. Easy example is where I went to school for undergrad, North Carolina Agricultural Technical State University. We say NCANT. The last 30 years, $2.75 billion was withheld from our university. The reason? It's a Black university. It's a historically Black university. And as such, due to racist policies and racist efforts, $2.75 billion over 30 years. Now, equality would be, oh, let's start giving them what they're supposed to get based on the policies of the state. Starting now, everyone gets what they're supposed to get now. That's great. Equity is making up for that 2.75 billion.
Interesting. Yeah. Damn. Okay, that is a tough one. That's a tough one. Interesting. Okay, let me look at the question. That really threw me off. That I was not expecting that. 2.5 billion. Good God.
Over 30 years.
Man, all we need is like for you to become a multi-billionaire. Then as an alumni, you can go back and they could be like a
the state needs to be giving that money. Shoot.
And all